What's up guys, Shawnthebro here, and we're back for another episode of the third-person action RPG tutorial series. In today's episode, we're going to be going over improving our inventory screen and our items in our game. And we're going to be doing this by adding images to these equipment slots. These were meant to be equipment slots, and I set them up many episodes ago when we were going over equipment and items, but I never actually assigned images to them. So don't worry, I didn't forget. We're going to take care of it in today's episode. We're really going to have a helmet, a chest plate. These could be weapons. I don't have anything like gauntlets for our arms in our game yet. If we want, we could add them, but weapons, I think, go nicely in these slots, especially because this series is going to support dual wielding. For the leggings, I do have two different slots here, but really in the series so far, we just have one piece of leggings that we can actually equip. We don't equip one left foot, one right foot. So this could be changed to something else. For now, I'm probably just going to fill out a default value in here and fill the other one up with leggings, but you get the point. We can fill out this little diagram based on images of the equipment that we have. And this is an important note because you could fill it out with whatever you want. But say I pick up this helmet specifically and I want to see this when I equip it, which I can do by pressing my interact key while I'm on the menu here, my select key. I want to see the image that is associated with this helmet. Same with all these other pieces. So we're going to map a texture or an image to each piece of equipment or each item. And then we're going to display them when they are equipped on our character. And that's what we'll be going over today. So before we get started, if you want to get caught up in the series and check out how we've done everything like our inventory, equipping items, attacking opponents, and a whole lot more, I'll link you to the entire third-person tutorial series right here in the top right corner so you can check out all of that. If you only care about your inventory screen and getting images associated with each one of your items and displaying them properly when equipped, you don't have to watch the whole series to do that, but I do recommend you watch the other inventory episodes because they are incredibly useful, and we are going to be building on top of that logic for today's episode. So if you have followed them, then this will be very easy to follow along with, so I'll link this right here in the top right corner as well. With that out of the way, I can go ahead and get started. So this is a code and blueprint tutorial series. Most of today's logic is going to be done in the blueprint because it's going to be with the inventory widget. But I will go over some things in code as well, and in fact I want to start in the code. So if we go to our code and we go to our default item class, the default item class is a child of actor, which is a parent to all of our different types of items. So we have items like consumables, and then we have weapons and equipment. So if we go to default weapon.h, you'll see it's a child of a default item. Now in here we have some fields that we want to fill out for each item, and this has already been done earlier in the series. And we use these different variables like our item type, our item rarity, the name of the item, the weight of the item, and put these in a data table so that when we interact with an item, we know all the information about it. Now typically I like to do this from code. We ended up making a blueprint structure. You go to blueprints data for each type, which can have additional fields like we have the name, the weight, and the rarity, which the code had, but this also has the specific class type to spawn. So we made different structures so that we could add extra fields to this blueprint struct and just pass that along to the data table. There's a very good chance I'm going to remove this one and just add the specific variables that we want. Make the code structure the one used in the data table. For today's episode specifically, I am going to skip that, but this will be coming in the very near future, so be ready for that. So what we're going to do specifically is go to each of these, F equipment, F item, and F weapon. These are three different structures, and we have a data table for each, item data table, weapon data table, and equipment data table. Let's start with F item. And in here we can add a new variable, and this is going to be our texture or our image that we want to associate with the item when we're looking at it in our inventory. We may also use this image elsewhere, like if we want to display a little icon next to the item when we're about to pick it up that shows what it looks like in some detail, or you might use this in a crafting menu, something like that. So I'm going to call this image or thumbnail image, something like that. I think image works pretty well, and then we will make it a texture 2D. That's right here, we want an object reference, and a texture 2D is basically just a texture, two-dimensional texture. When you import things like PNGs into your game or into your project, they are automatically converted to textures for you. So let's go ahead and add this to F item, F equipment, and F weapon. So add variable, make it a texture 2D, object reference. And we'll just call this image again. And F weapon, add variable, image, texture 2D. Save all of those. And once you've done that, your data tables will now be updated to contain this information. So item data table now has an image. So for our health potion, I actually didn't make one for that. I technically don't need to for this case because this is just for the equipment on the inventory menu, which doesn't show consumables at the current time, but I still think these should have images that we can display, especially in our inventory. So if you have images for things like your health potion and mana potion, definitely set them now. Otherwise, you can leave them alone until we get there. And then we can go to our equipment data table. And we have our basic helmet, basic chest plate, and basic leggings. Now if we go to our image here, we see that they all say none, and we can assign one. So I have images for all of these. I'll go ahead and show you. I just made these in PowerPoint, actually, with their shapes in about 5 minutes or so. So if we go to Art, UI, Items, I made a hat, a pretty standard hat here as our helmet icon, a shirt as our chest plate, a shoe as our leggings, a sword for our sword, and an axe for our axe. So if you have your images in, go ahead and use them. If you don't, you can import them. To import images into textures, you can literally copy the PNGs or the images into the folder structure. So if I open up this folder in my file explorer here, you'll see that I made an items folder and I just added a PNG for each of these. Automatically made U assets, which are textures, out of them. So simple enough, and now we can assign them. So equipment data table basic helmet, we have our default helmet. Basic chest plate, we have default chest plate. Basic leggings, we have default leggings. Save. Now we go to our blueprints data weapons data table. And in here we have our sword, dagger, and axe. I actually did not make one for the dagger. I will. But for the sword, we want default sword, and for the axe, we want default axe. And this will be enough as a good example. So now all of the different structures and all of the different data tables have the information they need for what we should display. When we actually equip the item is when we want to display that icon or that image to our inventory menu. So we need to go to Blueprints, Widgets, scroll down to Single Inventory Item. These are our items that appear when we're in our inventory. So if I am to play this really quickly, add the basic sword to my inventory and open up my inventory, the single inventory item class is this right here. Now when I click this with my mouse, or when I interact with it using our select button, I equip the sword, as you can see here. So if we are to go into here now, we can go to our graph, and in the event graph, we have this section where we're determining if the player pressed the confirm item button or selected it by clicking it with the mouse or gamepad input, and that's what I was just showing you in the game. So when we do this, we do a bunch of logic, basically determine what we're going to spawn, fill it out with the right data, make sure we don't have anything else equipped. If we do unequip it, then equip this one. But you'll see there is this switch statement where we get the item type, and if it's item, weapon, or equipment, we do different things for each of them. So again, for items specifically, I don't have anything that I need to do here, at least not for today's episode. We will be using images on them, but we'll skip it for now for simplicity. We're not going to be able to visualize it anyway. Now if we go to weapon, you'll see we determine if the item is already equipped or not. If it is, we're removing the weapon that's equipped and stating the weapon is not equipped. And if it's not, we're attaching the weapon and stating that it is equipped. So attach weapon is in base weapon BP, and this is what happens when we actually attach it to the character. When we attach it to the character, that is when we want to update the icon. So here in base weapon BP, at the end of the logic here, after we've set the item mesh to be visible, we could go ahead and assign the image to the inventory menu. Now we don't have any way of speaking to the inventory menu or inventory window as we call it here from the base weapon BP, but we do have a way of talking to the character, and the character is able to open up the inventory menu. So if we go back to our blueprints and go back to content, third person CPP, blueprints, characters, base character BP. So in base character BP, we have an input action that we're listening for to toggle the inventory menu. The one is called open close menu, and then the other is toggle inventory menu. So when we press this, as long as we're alive and the inventory menu is not already open, then we will go ahead and create one. And you'll see that we're doing that here. And we have an inventory menu reference on the character blueprint, which means the character can speak to the inventory window or the inventory menu. So once the weapon is equipped in base weapon BP, we should tell the character blueprint to update the inventory window. And that's the flow that we're going to follow here. First things first, let's stay in our base character blueprint and let's make a new function or new event that's going to handle this. So we can make a new function plus function. We'll call it update inventory menu icons. Okay. And in here, we can use our inventory menu reference right here, get it, or just type get inventory menu reference. And we can make sure it's valid first, right click, convert to validated get. If it's valid, we can call a function on this to update the corresponding inventory menu, equipment, or weapon icon with the data passed into this function. So let's go over to inventory window, and let's make a function in here as well, plus function update icon. Now I'm going to compile and save all of these things. And back in base character BP, we can call inventory menu reference update icon. And I'll just rename this function to update inventory menu icon. Now we can call this function on the character to update the information on the inventory menu, but we need to know what we're trying to update, right? We can't just call this and expect it to know. We have a few different ways we could do this. We could pass icon directly through all these functions and also tell the inventory menu which image they need to update, or we could determine which image they have to update and allow it to look at the equipped item, which is now going to be set because we're doing this after it is assigned in base weapon BP and base equipment BP, and just grab the image that way. I see benefits to both, but I think I like the second one more for simplicity because we could just pass in what we need to update, say left arm, right arm, chest plate, helmet, and the inventory itself can figure out what is equipped in that slot. And the character has access to things like the current helmet. And so if we know we're updating the helmet, we can pass the current helmet in, or rather pass in just the data about the current helmet, so specifically the image, the texture, to the icon that we want to update. So we can do this as a quick example and then expand upon it. So let's say we have update inventory menu icon, and at the end of base weapon BP, we've already attached the weapon to the character and all of that. We have our character reference coming in to attach weapon here. It is this bottom blue node. We can make another reroute node here. So we can cast our character reference, which is our code class, to our base character BP. And if we are a base character BP, if this cast succeeds, then we will be able to call our new function that we just made called update inventory menu icon. So we've attached our weapon. We called our function. Now in base character BP, we're ready to call update icon for the inventory menu. If we had something like an enum, for example, to represent all of our different types, so helmet, chest plate, leggings, right-handed weapon, left-handed weapon, whatever slot you're trying to fill on the inventory menu, then we could simply pass that along to the menu with the image, and we're done. Now, we don't have an enum for that specifically, and while we could add one today, I told you that I'm going to be converting some of this stuff from blueprints to code, specifically those structures in the blueprints data from earlier. And because of this, I don't want to make a new enum right now because then we'd have to link the enum up and assign values to it. I'd want to do all this in code, so for simplicity's sake for today's episode, I'm just going to use a boolean for each of our different types. Technically, my types are left-handed weapon, right-handed weapon, helmet, chest plate, and leggings. So if we add a boolean for each of these, again, this will be an enum when we consolidate some of this logic, but using 5 booleans is really going to be about the same thing because only one of them should be true when we call this function, and then that does the same thing as an enum would do. So 5 booleans, let's just go down the list. So left weapon, right weapon, helmet, chest plate, leggings. Now from here it's super simple. If we go back to base weapon BP, we know that when we call this function, we're either going to be updating a left or a right weapon. While the series is going to support dual wielding, it doesn't currently. So if we try and get the current weapon that the character has, we don't have like get left weapon, get first weapon. We just have get current weapon, as you'll see here. We can still do this demonstration by selecting the one that we want, whether we want it to appear on the left or the right, but it doesn't really matter in this case. So let's say we want it to be a left weapon, or we know this is going to be in our left slot, and we will know that when we get to dual wielding. That makes perfect sense. Now in base character BP, if it is a left weapon, and we can add some reroute nodes, and space some stuff out here. We can add a branch. So if we're updating the left weapon icon, that means that we have to get the character's current left weapon. Now again, I don't have left and right weapon yet in the series. We will. Current weapon we'll have to do for now. Current weapon should know the texture or the data table entry for the type that current weapon is will have the texture that we need. I'm going to stress this again. Because they're different structs between the blueprint and the code, we have to do this a little bit more roundabout. That's why I want to convert this to code. The farther we go through this episode, the more I'm saying, yes, that's a great idea. We need to do it as soon as possible. Regardless, we have our current weapon, and we need to get the texture from it. The way we get the information from the data table to the weapon itself is in our inventory window widget. On event construct, we go through all the items that we have in our inventory. We find the associated information and grab the defaults, put them into set item details from table, and in here we determine based on the type of item that it is to use the corresponding data table and then get the corresponding values. And in here you can see an example of how we get information from our different items from the data table. We've created our data tables in a smart way here, where we have an ID of each item, and that corresponds to the row name. So ID of 0 is our first item, our first weapon in our weapon data table, for example. If we go back to base character BP, we have our current weapon variable here, which is the actual object reference to our weapon. We can get ID, and we want this one right here, the one that returns the integer. This is the ID of our weapon in our system. Going back to single inventory item here, you can see that we converted this from an integer to a string and a string to name. And the name gets passed into the row name of get data table row from whatever data table we want to use. In this case, since we know we're using a weapon, we can do the same thing. So get data table row. We want to use our weapon data table. We want to pass in the ID, but we can't because we have to convert it to a string. So to string, integer, to name, so string to name right here, and the name can go in the row here. Now we're able to get the row based on the weapon's ID. Much easier if we just have a code structure that we can access this information on. If anything, this episode has made it much more apparent why this could be useful in code instead of blueprint like we originally did it very long ago. But the data table row here has an out row, and we can break that to get the information about the weapon, which finally gives us what we need, and that is the image. If we pass in the image here to our update icon, along with the type of thing that we're editing, like left weapon, we'll know exactly what to change and what to change it to. So if we plug this in here, move this over, and if the row is found, we call update icon. Now, again, we do need to update the information that we're passing into update icon here. So if we go back to inventory window and go to our new function, update icon. A couple things we should take in that enum. Again, we don't have an enum because of the whole code blueprint thing. So instead, we're going to do it with 5 booleans. We'll convert this to an enum when we do the other conversions from blueprint to code. Then we're just going to mimic what we did in base character BP. So we have 5 parameters. It's going to be left weapon, right weapon, helmet, chest plate, leggings. Left weapon. right weapon, helmet, chest plate, leggings. Okay, and then we also need the image itself. Texture 2D, object reference, image. Now we have everything we need in here, so go back to base character BP. Only one of these booleans should be true, as I mentioned earlier, because remember, this is just basically an enum. This will be an enum. So we can actually just pass all these booleans into this update icon here, and it will work. So this might get a little ugly, but leggings go to leggings, chest plate goes to chest plate, helmet goes to helmet, right weapon goes to right weapon, and left weapon goes to left weapon. And there we go. A little ugly, but basically just make sure all the booleans get to the right spot. This will be an enum, so this will just be one thing that we're passing in. And then we want to pass in our image from the data table into update icon. Now, update icon has everything it needs for weapons. We will need to do this for equipment as well. If we are to go back into our inventory menu widget right here, we can use this enum, again, 5 booleans, to determine which thing we want to change on our inventory menu. So we have our head, our left arm, our left leg, right arm, and chest plate. We have images, and they're all variables, if you see. And we can use them. So if left weapon is true, then what we want to do is set left arm armor image, is what I called it, left arm armor image. That is this one right here. This is technically the character's right arm if they're facing us, right? If this is their face looking at you, this would be their right arm. But we don't have to think about that too much right now. Just throwing that out there. So we have our left arm armor image, and we just want to set brush from texture. And we can pass in the image here. And really all we're going to be doing is doing this for all of these. You don't have to just copy this. You could make it a little bit more advanced using something like a select statement, but this is going to be an enum because that list could grow too. We might want to support more in the future. So I'm just going to kind of throw this together, but the actual conceptual logic that we're learning in today's episode is not going to change. I just want to make it clear we're going to be cleaning it up. You can just go ahead and copy this, paste it, then you would link up your texture here, and if this is false, say it wasn't left weapon, then we're not setting the left arm armor image, but instead we'll be setting our right arm armor image. And make sure you pass in the right weapon boolean as the condition. If you want to make it look kind of nice for the time being, you can. Just change out left arm armor image for right arm armor image. And those are our 2 weapons. Now we can do the equipment as well, and we will. If we are to actually test this now, it should appear in our left weapon slot when we pick up a weapon and equip it. So here we are in our game now. I've added my basic sword to my inventory. I can open my inventory and I can equip my sword. And when I do that, you'll see that I now have the icon of the sword in my left weapon slot. That's exactly what we want. Now when we close this and open it up, it is going to go away because we only called that function on attaching the weapon and we're actually equipping it. When the inventory menu loads, it does not have that data, but it could and it should. But ignoring that for now, let's go back to the base weapon BP and let's make sure our right weapon works. So uncheck left weapon. Imagine we're changing the enum from left weapon to right weapon, and then compile and save. Again, we don't really support dual wielding right now, but we will. So when you change this enum, it won't exactly work because we have this boolean going into a branch here to make sure it's a weapon before accessing the weapon data table. But if we want the right weapon to work, it's super simple. We can drag off of our right weapon, add a reroute node here just to clean it up. These 2 can be put into an OR boolean. So if it is a left weapon or a right weapon, so left or right, and we don't actually need these reroutes, then we can go into the branch here. So left or right will work. So try playing it again. We are going to add the sword to our inventory, and then we're going to go to our inventory and equip it, and you'll see it appears in the right weapon slot. So if we had a second one like our axe, it would appear there as well. And we can actually test this. So if we unequip this and pick up our axe, which we know has an image, we can equip the axe. You'll see the axe icon appears there instead. At this point, we need to go back and make sure this works for the equipment as well. So if we go to our update menu icon from our base character BP, then we need to support the other data tables. In this case, we need to get data table row. We need to pass in the data table for our equipment, which is going to be equipment data table. And then we need to get the ID for the row name based off of the type of equipment that it is. So we can just grab our current helmet here and get the ID and convert it to a string and then convert it to a name and pass it in. I'm not going to make this super clean because we are going to be improving this with that enum I keep mentioning. I just kind of want to show you how this is going to work. It's very simple setup. We can pretty much just copy and paste, but the difference is we'll need to use our equipment data table and we'll need to break that into a F equipment instead of F weapon. And you'll see that I'm going to connect this only if the branch up top returns false, because only if this item is not one of the weapons do we want to even look at this behavior. So if you try and use F weapon here, you can't because they're not the same structure. Equipment has its own structure. So F equipment, open that up, pass in the image, and then pass in all your booleans and the target, same as before. Now, without a real enum for our equipment slots or our inventory slots in general, we have to make sure we're on the right one. We need to add a branch here, and only if the helmet is true do we want to go through the helmet logic here. You could use your equipment type enum because we do have an enum that determines the type. It doesn't separate things like left and right weapon, which is one of the reasons we may want an inventory slot enum. Also, if we want to have other things in here that aren't just equipment, aren't just types of weapons, but also, again, how many different weapons you can hold, or accessories and other things like that. But when using the boolean, we need to make sure we're using the right type. So if it's current helmet, we can go ahead and do this logic. But if it's not, go down to the next one, which is the current chest. Now, once we do this, we can go to the inventory window, update icon, and we need to support the equipment here as well. So if we go to our helmet, that is our head armor image. We can just copy the logic that we did for the others and put it here as well. Just make sure we switch over to the current helmet boolean. So only if it's false do we want to proceed here, because if it's false, that means it's not the left arm or left weapon, and it's not the right arm or right weapon. The next possible choice here is a helmet. So make sure to connect your current helmet to that boolean, to that pin. I'm going to do a little bit of cleanup here, even though we're going to switch it. I don't want it to be completely unreadable. It should be a very simple process to swap over, but we need our logic to be easy to read to actually do that. And make sure you pass the image along that's coming into the function. We'll pass it the right one from the base character blueprint, and now we need to switch out the image to our head armor image. And once we do that, we're pretty much good here, but let's go ahead and go back to the base character BP and fix it up for the chest as well. All right, so we're going to do the same thing that we did for the helmet, just for sake of simplicity. That means we're going to need another branch, specifically for the chest boolean. Then we're going to need to copy all these nodes, but get the current chest instead of the current helmet and pass that ID into the data table as the row name. Then hook everything back up again, all your booleans to your function call and your target to your function call as well. And once you've done that, we can go back to inventory window one more time and fill out the chest in there as well. Like with the helmet, we want to copy the behavior of the ones that came before it and paste them in here, and then just change the boolean that we're using in the image that we're adjusting. So I'll copy this over only if it's false, which means it wasn't a left arm, right arm, or headpiece. Then we want to make sure we use the chest plate boolean in the reroute node here, or for the branch. hook up your image or your texture reference here so we know what we're calling this on. Then go back to the designer, figure out the exact image that we're trying to replace here. It is going to be our chest, which is called chest armor image. You know the drill. You can remove the old one and put in chest armor image here. We're going to skip leggings because of that thing I mentioned earlier. We have 2 boxes, but we can't really split them. We can do more with it in the future, and we will, but we don't need to do it for this episode. I think the point has been proven. We'll go back to base weapon BP and take a look at how we were calling this. So we were casting our character reference to base character BP and attach weapon. We were using that to call our update inventory menu icon. We need to do this in our base equipment BP as well, so we can go to base equipment BP and add these 2 nodes into it. And we can do it in attach equipment. In the equipment BP, attach equipment is a function. We're actually in it right now. And I want to make note of something here. We do have equipment type. We don't have the idea of an inventory slot enum. We don't have like a right and a left weapon or anything like that. But we do have a type of equipment. And that type of equipment could be used here to determine what booleans are going to be set in our function. And eventually, when we swap it over, which enum we're passing in. Go ahead and add those 2 nodes from the base weapon BP. That's our cast to our base character BP and the function call. And make sure you pass in the character reference to the cast and set the appropriate boolean. To choose which boolean to set, we can use that enum I was telling you about, our equipment type. So we can grab our equipment type and we can put it into a switch statement. If the type is helmet, then we want to check helmet. If the type is chestplate, we want to check chestplate. And if the type is leggings, we want to check leggings. We're not going to have to deal with these booleans forever, so it's okay if it's not the prettiest right now. We just want to make sure we're setting the right one based off the type. Don't forget to set the character BP as the target so that we can actually call these functions. Then you can go ahead and test it. Do the same test as before. Load into the game, add something to your inventory, and try to equip it like the sword. This still works, but now if we go and check out our armor, like our helmet, this should also work when we equip it, and you can see it does. It will still have the same issue with resetting when you close the inventory, but we can also pick up our chest plate. So the chest plate works, the helmet works, and the sword works. You can see that our inventory is filling out, and that's great. The leggings technically can be set in that function, but we don't have the entire system set up for that yet, so it's not going to do anything. It's not going to change the image, and that's okay. We can't really equip them yet either, so no big deal. The bug where when you close the inventory and reopen it, all the images for your armor are blank, that can be solved by simply calling update inventory menu icons in the base character BP in event construct of the inventory menu, or inventory window widget as we call it. But that would only work for the type that you pass in, so you could check all the booleans, then connect all of your branches so that even if helmet is chosen, it goes to chest plate, or even if left weapon is chosen, it goes to right weapon, and so on and so forth. There's a much more elegant solution, which we can achieve using that enum that I'm bringing up yet again. Let's handle this in the next episode when we convert some of this to code, add the enum for the inventory slot, and reduce the complexity of this logic. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and if you did, please subscribe and consider joining the YouTube membership, Discord subscriptions, or Patreon to help support the channel and myself. I'm very grateful for everyone who has, and I hope you guys are enjoying the perks of doing so. If you ran into any problems following this tutorial or any of my tutorials, feel free to join the Discord community. I would be happy to help you with any problems you ran into, and the support is completely free. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Shawnthebro, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye, guys.